Hey, Dan from Sigma Dogs again. I have another video for you today on one of the most common problems that eCollar users face, and that is the issue of having bad contact or no contact at all. This seems to be the biggest problem, or I believe this to be the biggest problem, because I've run eCollar groups for 12 to 15 years, and on a weekly basis there's always a multitude of questions where people are complaining that they don't think that their dog can feel the eCollar, and then the stimulation seems to be too much. Before I get into that, I'd like to go on record as saying that I'm not primarily just an eCollar trainer. A large percentage of my clients never touch an eCollar. My clients, everything's on a case-by-case basis, but I can assure you that every dog starts out with a regimen of positive reinforcement training. Positive reinforcement training is the best way to teach a dog a new behavior, and then the corrective tools are the best way to stop the behaviors that we don't like. In a lot of cases though, what I do, by simply giving the dog a lot more outlets and things to do in their life, I'm able to resolve a lot of problem behaviors without ever relying on corrections too much. The majority of my eCollar users simply want to have a higher level of safety if they take their dog out off leash somewhere. If they take the dog hiking or in a field, they don't want the dog taken off after a rabbit or a deer. But I'm going to have another video that gets into the whole issue of reliability and the various types of training, and whether or not any dog can be trained to a very high level of reliability. I'm super opinionated on that subject, and we'll get into greater depth in another video. Okay, so again, to sum up, what a contact issue is when one of the probes on the collar isn't making good contact with the dog's skin. The user starts to dial up, and they might be at level 20, they go 21, 22, 23, and then all of a sudden 24, the dog yelps and is jumping out of his skin. Obviously, you don't want that sort of thing. In my experience over the years, a dog, when you do the initial training, or you try to find the lowest level that the dog can feel on, let's take eCollar Technologies. I can't remember the last time that I had a dog that needed more than 10 to feel it. If your dog in a non-distracting environment can only feel the collar at say 15 or 20, you're probably doing something wrong. You have a contact issue, or you don't have the ability to read your dog. So let me also say that please don't buy a cheap eCollar and put it on your dog, because you potentially could have lots of issues. The other thing that I'm going to highly recommend is that you go to a very experienced trainer that has worked with eCollars for quite some time, and that's always going to be infinitely better than trying to figure out things yourself. So with a contact issue, first of all, the first thing you want to do, the default probes that come on it, they're made really cheap. There's plastic and then metal on the end. Some dogs have a skin allergy to that metal. Take those off, throw them away, order yourself a good set of titanium probes or contacts, whatever you prefer to call them. Right away, those titanium probes, your dog's less likely to have a skin allergy. Now, the next point is that those contacts, titanium contacts, if you order through either eCollar Technologies or Dogtra, they have a wide variety of lengths in those contact points. So, find one that's appropriate for the length or the thickness of your dog's fur. So on something like a Dachshund or a Pit Bull that has a very thin coat, you're not going to use the same probes as on a Malamute. Obviously with a Malamute or Husky, you're going to want to get the longest ones available. Okay, so the next biggest thing you can do, or actually just as important, I believe, is doing something called double bricking. So what is double bricking? Double bricking is when you put two receivers on one collar and you pair it to the remote in such a fashion that when you hit the button, the stimulation will come from both receivers. I love double bricking. Almost everything that I have is double bricked. So there's a number of reasons. So first of all, you're more likely with two receivers that at least one of the receivers is going to be making a good connection with the skin at any point in time. Okay, so that's reason number one. Reason number two is when you go to a double receiver configuration, typically the numbers drop way down, which gives you a lot more dynamic range in that in the case of emergency, you can actually, the virtual ability to dial up much higher is there. For instance, each receiver, you're only going to be able to go to 100, but if your dog typically works at 20, and now you bring that number down to 10, that's obviously going to give you a much bigger delta that you can dial up that collar. So that becomes useful in an emergency. When the stimulation's coming from 2 points, the dog mentally, I believe, has a harder time to block it out also. I also like the idea that when the stimulation is coming from 2 points, it's a little bit more balanced, because if you need to dial up and the collar's on one side, it does cause a little bit of a contraction that causes your dog's head to turn. When it's on both sides, it's going to be a little bit more balanced out. So let me get into one of the biggest reasons that I love, double breaking. And that simply is you can now put your collar much looser on the dog. So, I've seen this like over a number of years, and when you have 2 receivers, now all of a sudden your collar doesn't have to be as tight. The traditional advice you get with eCollars is that the collar should be on so tight that you can barely get 2 fingers under. Well, that's not terribly comfortable for the dog, especially if the dog's exercising in hot weather. The air is going to be a little bit more restricted. But what I found, when you go to the double brick, you're now able to open that collar 1 or 2 notches more, and the dog still feels it at a low level. When we take our dogs out on eCollars to let them run around, this is supposed to be to give them a better life. We obviously want them to be as comfortable as possible. So some of my critics might think that, I'm suggesting the double brick because I need more power to train, every dog and this and that. And, trust me, that there are dogs that are very insensitive to the collar, and yes, you do need more power, but there's a whole bunch of them that you don't. So that's not the reason why that I like double bricking. The next criticism might be that I want to sell my clients more equipment so that my profits are higher. Well, yep, I have a rebuttal to that also. I sell equipment below MAP pricing. MAP pricing is the lowest that you can advertise the equipment at. The manufacturer sets limits that you're allowed to go online and advertise. I'm selling it lower than that price. People that know me from the eCollar forums that I've run over the years, if they contact me, they get that same sort of pricing. One of the big reasons that I do this, even though there's not a ton of money in me now selling the equipment at that low pricing, is if I get contacted by somebody that's brand new to eCollars, I try to set up a phone call and I try to warn them of the caveats to make sure that they don't do bad things to their dog and, tarnish the reputation of a very embattled piece of equipment. So anyways, what we're going to go to next, I'm going to pull up some of the various probe lengths just to show you the variety of lengths that probes come in. And, you know, we're going to have a look at those, and I'm going to show you some of the double brick configurations. A couple more recommendations I can make before I forget on the contact issue, and this is whether you go single brick, double brick. If your dog has an extremely heavy coat, some people have used like a fur stripper to get rid of the heavy undercoat, and that often gets better contact. Other people have shaved the area down a little bit, you know, where the colors are going to sit. Again, some people might not want to do that because of the aesthetics, that they don't want their dog to have a bare patch of fur. And then the final thing that you might do, and this is, some people get a laugh at it, but I have known people to use a little bit of medical grade jelly, if you know what I mean, on the skin and fur to increase the connection. You know, you're gonna decrease the resistance basically, because that stuff's designed to, you know, increase, it's designed to work with that sort of manner. Sorry, it's designed to work that way. You know, let's just leave it at that. And when I said, you know, medical grade jelly, you can use your imagination. There's things available in your hardware store, not your hardware store, your pharmacy, that's going to serve that purpose. But we've gone off on a bit of a tangent. So I'm now going to show you a number of the contact points and collars that I've double bricked, you know, in a second. Okay, moving on to contacts. The first pair of contacts that I'm showing are the default contacts that come on the collar. I can only describe them as cheap and nasty. You might want to toss those in the bin. Yeah, some dogs have an allergy to the metal. It's plastic at the bottom. You know, maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm a bit too picky. I just don't like them. I never leave them on, you know, and even with a client or a customer, I'll highly suggest, even if, you know, I have to lose $1 or $2 on the contacts, I really don't like people leaving here with those contacts. The next ones that are up are the half inch or close to half inch anyway. Yeah, good for a short-coated dog. You certainly wouldn't want to put it, again, on a husky, Malamute, Chow, or something like that. You know, they're not going to dig far enough through the fur. And they're about, you know, pretty close in length to the default ones. So next up are the most common one I use, and that is the 3/4 inch length ones. And again, similar design, they're just a tiny bit longer. And the one up from those are actually the new design, where they have made you can see it in the video, but they've made the tip just a little bit more pointy, more fine at the end. I guess that's with hopes of making it through the undercoat. You know, sorry for the movement there. Yeah, so basically the same thing. And again, for most dogs, those two different sets or those last two contacts will be perfectly fine. And then finally, we have the 1 inch contact. So if you do have a Husky, Malamute, German Shepherd, Chow, anything with a real thick fluff, you know, and even some of the doodles, you might want to try these out. I had a client that had a Malamute. It looked like we were having contact issues. When I ordered their collar, like that was on the collars that I owned, I said, give me the longest contacts you currently make. I wasn't even aware that they had these 1 inch contacts. and they went to the 1-inch and they did the double brick, and I mean, that dog's levels on, again, they went to a 580 though, because they believe the dog would be highly insensitive on the 580 with the long contacts, double brick. And I mean, most of the time we're less than 10, you know, the vast majority of times, even when the dog was slightly distracted. So again, that seemed to be the secret sauce. 580, double brick and titanium contacts. Anyways, so the next thing we're going to move on to, I'm going to show you a few of the color configurations that I have, just to show you that I practice what I preach, and you'll be able to see what it looks like exactly. But anyways, I'll get those out now. Okay, the first color we have here is an eCollar Technologies RX90, or the type of color that you typically would use with either the Mini Educator, the Easy Educator, or the Pro Educator. This particular configuration, I'm using the Bungee. This particular Bungee setup, I'm not really wild about this connector. There's something better on the market that I'm going to start using, or basically put together myself. Again, I love eCollar Technologies products, but not everything that they have. So that's one of the rare things I don't care for. And you can see I have the titanium probes. Would be that distance for, based on the size of the dog, you might want to adjust the distance that they are apart. Okay, put that aside. Here's a Dogtra color. This is Dogtra Combo, one of my, most favorite colors ever made. Most favorite, I don't know if that's good English or not. But anyways, you can see there, definitely it's a Dogtra. Same sort of deal. I just have that on a regular strap, again with the 3/4 inch length probes, double bricked. You have the ability with most Dogtra colors also to double brick them. A type of contact that I didn't mention earlier that will be a lot of interest to people, and I'll give you my feelings on this. Please excuse that I don't have the proper nuts on one of the receiver, and I'm actually using some contacts to hold it down as opposed to, the proper nuts. But these are called the comfort wings, and these little wires here make contact. Now, I don't know if that would be more comfortable for the dog, having that wire press against the skin as opposed to the point on a contact. So this is just, what I've noticed. If I use long enough contacts, that the comfort wings really don't make that much of a difference for me. I find I'm using roughly the same level. So the thing with the comfort wings is they're quite a bit more expensive than the long contacts. Like, I believe the comfort wings are, MSRP is probably over $30, $35. And now if you're double bricking, you're going to need 2 of them. It gets a little bit expensive. The long contacts are relatively cheap in comparison. So, for somebody, if I'm selling them a collar and it's already getting a little bit expensive, I'm going to probably steer them towards the long contacts. So something I didn't mention either is that typically, if you have a really small dog, and here is the, micro educator type collar, where, that's supposed to be for small dogs, but to me, it wasn't really that much of a difference. I bought a few units. If you have a really sensitive dog, they're a little bit lower power, which will give you a little bit more leeway in the lower end, that you don't have to be on the exact number. They would be good for that. Typically though, if you're going on a really small dog, you aren't going to double brick it. It just gets a little bit too bulky. I hope these eCollar manufacturers keep innovating and keep trying to make things smaller and smaller. I believe Dogtra has a product that would be smaller than this, but I haven't tried it yet. I'm considering getting one just to try it. And anyways, see how that goes. Finally, we have some new products from eCollar Technologies that are rapidly becoming my favorite. So kind of tied with the Dogtra Combo, and they no longer make the Dogtra Combo, but this is the Fob 560 with, again, the 3/4 length contacts. Just goes to show you, you know, on all their collars, these various contacts, it's the same thread. Gives you some sort of comparison for size too. So they've gone for a little bit slightly slimmer profile. It's not quite as chunky looking. It's maybe a tiny bit longer, and it's a little bit more sleek, and it doesn't stand out as much. So I applaud them for that. I haven't weighed it yet, but to me, these new Fob 560s feel lighter than the other receiver. And again, maybe in another video I'll weigh them to do a comparison. And then also a new product from them was a 580 that it functions, you can actually use the same transmitter for the 560 and the 580, and the difference is with the 580 it's a significantly bigger unit, and but there's more power there. So for a dog that's very insensitive, I definitely recommend going to the 580. Now, what Greg Van Kuren has told me, the owner of eCollar Technologies, is that the 560 and 580 use a different waveform that the dog's more likely to notice. Now, I haven't really done a lot of comparison testing between the Pro Educator receiver and say these new fob units. I will say, well, first let me do the comparison of the two, the 560 and 580, to give you some idea of size difference. As you can see, that 580 is quite a bit bigger, right? The new fob units also aren't going to have the same range as the, say, Pro Educator. It's a much smaller remote and much lighter, and I think they couldn't pack the same electronics in it. But I've personally tested it out to about 650 feet. Now, for most people, unless you're doing certain types of hunting, you should not be letting your dog get that far away from you. Your dog becomes a very small speck at that distance, and your stimulation to recall him, you might not be able to tell whether he's moving towards you or away. You could definitely be communicating the wrong message to him. So, for most, I see online all the time people are asking, oh, but does this do a half mile or a full mile? Yeah, I get it that if there's vegetation, a color that say does 3/4 or a half mile or whatever, that might be cut down to a small fraction of that. You might need that extra power, but guess what? Again, you're not going to be able to see your dog, so you might be giving random stimulation. With some dogs, if you're calling them and you're stimulating, even if they're moving towards you, they're going to still understand to get their butt back towards you. But there's other dogs that simply would be confused, and you could cause them to run off into the woods. So, again, you have to be a little bit careful when you start playing around with these larger distance recalls, unless you've been doing this for many years and you really understand how to do this, and maybe you're pairing it up with a GPS so you can tell the direction that the dog's going. Again, Garmin makes some really good products if you want a GPS collar. But I hope that helps somebody out. If somebody's out there, and they're working with their dog and they're having contact issues, please feel free to call me. You can Sigma Dogs on Facebook or sigmadogs.com. Sigma is spelled S-I-G-M-A, just like the mathematical symbol. I'd be happy to speak to you. Again, I'm trying to promote good eCollar use. I don't want people doing bad things for their dog, and I don't want an embattled tool to, you know, gain a bad reputation. But anyway, thanks again for watching the video, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Please, you know, subscribe to the channel. The subscriptions are what are going to cause me, you know, will motivate me. That's the word I'm looking for. Motivate me to create additional videos. If the subscriptions aren't climbing, I'm not going to be creating any more videos, because I don't want to, you know, create something for nothing. In other words, something that nobody will watch. But for those who have subscribed, you know, thank you very much, and you have been the inspiration for me to now make the second video in this series. Talk to you later.